In our experience of life, have we ever had those high moments, those moments that were so grand and great you just wish they wouldn't end? But to get to that point, what type of mountain was needed to be climbed, to recognize, and as we get there, to all of a sudden have far beyond any expectation fulfilled. Peter, James, and John go with Jesus up this high mountain, and I'm sure that they were sort of asking themselves, what is this about? Are we going to pray? Are we going to listen to Jesus' teaching? What is this about? And as they go up, all of a sudden, Jesus is transfigured before them, face becoming white as the sun. That gleam, that wonder, that beauty of an otherworldly amazement. And all of a sudden, Moses and Elijah are present. The law, Moses, and the prophets, Elijah, the fulfillment of them being present to Jesus. And as Peter, James, and John are totally amazed and trying to figure, what is this about? Peter, in his typical way, needs something to say. So he asks, shall I build 3 tents? Shall we settle here? Shall we be here for a little while? And all of a sudden, that voice that we hear is, listen to my beloved Son. How do we listen? What, in our experience, in those high points, do we hear God saying to us? How will we fulfill it? How do we listen to Jesus? As the disciples fall prostrate, they are trying to figure out, I'm sure, what does this all mean? And Jesus comes and touches them and tells them, rise, do not be afraid. In a world that is so filled with challenges and questions and difficulties and unknown, especially this year with the pandemic and a cry for justice in our world and especially within our country, we look and we need to remember not only those high points in our life, but what is the message? Do we hear my beloved Son, with whom God is well pleased? And how do we listen to him? That is an immense challenge. Jesus, as he takes the disciples down, tells them, do not tell of this vision until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. We know that Jesus changed, he died, he rose. He ascended into heaven. How do we share that message now? How do we work in our lives, realizing this is the time, this is the moment that we are asked to fulfill what Jesus has said? Many scripture scholars will tell us this was the turning point of Jesus' public ministry, that when he came down, it was heading towards Jerusalem. And in heading towards Jerusalem, recognized what that meant, not only the fulfillment of his teaching, but also the suffering and eventually the death, horrible death, but also that fulfillment in the resurrection. As we hear and recognize those high points in our lives, in that experience, and ask God, help us to understand what Jesus asks of us, we come down the mountain, we come back to the valleys and the plains, but are we willing also to listen to the change that Jesus asks of us? to fulfill that call and recognize that through our baptismal calling as priest, prophet, and royalty, that we have a message to share, that God has created us, He loves us, He died for each and every one of us. And as we hear and see one another, how do we lift and carry each other in this world? May we ask Jesus to truly help us to listen to Him. And as we celebrate this Transfiguration, may we call to mind how Jesus shines His loving, caring face on us and seeks to lift us up so that we lift one another.